Hello and welcome to the first Flipped Collaborate session for Supporting Inclusion for Primary. My name is Karina Stocker and I'm the Unit Coordinator and also an ELA within this unit. This is for Assessment 1, your essay. These flipped assessment sessions are recorded in advance to enable you to view the expectations of the assessment within our unit in a time that's suitable to you. This session will also feed forward to a live Collaborate session where you will have the opportunity to ask any individual or unique questions relating directly to your own assessment piece. And that live Collaborate session for Assessment 1 will be held on Monday the 27th of March at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. But please don't worry if you're unable to make it on the night, as there will be a recording made available to you as soon as possible. So let's get started. Assessment 1 in a nutshell. So it contributes to 40% of your final marks, so it's quite a large chunk. The word count is 2,000 words, plus or minus 10%. So that means that your assignment should be between 1,800 and 2,200 words. The purpose of this assessment is to deepen your understandings of policy and its implications on the way we teach children with additional needs and those learners who are culturally diverse. And it's due at 5 p.m. on Monday the 10th of April. So preparation is generally the key for a successful assessment submission. So please take note of the key wording from the assessment details and apply your knowledge from the learning materials and beyond these to scaffold and support your assessment findings. The task requires you to write an analytical essay in which you consider 3 policies and the implications of these policies for teaching students with diverse needs. So how do the policies implicate teaching? Okay, within your essay, you will define wellbeing and inclusion in the context of primary education. You will summarise the key elements of the policies that specifically relate to inclusion for additional needs and culturally diverse learners in the primary school. You will critically analyse the policies. You will consider the implications of these policies for your own practice as a graduate teacher, and you will adhere to APA referencing conventions and demonstrate competence in academic writing. Okay, let's break these bullet points down just a little bit further. If you note the bolded text and where the key words are, you'll use these to guide you in your investigations. You will set yourself up for success if you do this. So all of these things have been covered in the learning materials. So obviously learning materials are your starting point. Defining wellbeing inclusion within a primary educational context is quite straightforward, and you will utilise information from the learning materials and beyond, so other research that you do, to assist you in responding to this element of the essay. In relation to the policies, you will be influenced by the state you are intending to teach in, as you must draw on state and federal policies. So you've been provided with both the Disability Standards for Education and also the Student Diversity and the Australian Curriculum. You then need to source your relevant state policy as part of these assessment expectations. So that will be your state policy. The other ones will be your federal policy. Within these documents, you are seeking elements that specifically relate to inclusion for additional needs and culturally diverse learners in the primary school. Rather than being just a description of the policies, your analytical essay will critically analyse the policies. That is, you'll make connections of how the theoretical, broader societal and educational context impacts on inclusion and wellbeing practices, because all of those 3 things are impacting on how we teach children. You will draw from the policies specific and relevant information that demonstrate your insightful understanding of the key concepts and the implications for teaching practices in regard to these policies. You will hopefully use concrete examples to illustrate your argument in regards to the impacts of these connections on your teaching practice. You need to support your response with relevant readings and explore these learning materials and also further research beyond the learning materials. Of course, as with all education units, you need to use APA and academic writing elements such as spelling, punctuation, grammar, sentence structure, an overall essay structure to demonstrate your competence in academic writing. So let's break these dot points down even further. Okay, so if we go back to the slide I was just on, you have a look at that first dot point. It's asking you to define well-being and inclusion. So what does define mean? Define is to explain or identify the nature or essential qualities of, or to describe. So you need to explain or identify the nature or essential qualities of well-being and inclusion within a primary context. So describing well-being and inclusion. The next dot point asks you to summarize the key elements of the policies. So summarize means to make a summary of, state, or express in a concise form the key elements of the policy that specifically relate to inclusion for additional needs of culturally diverse learners in a primary school need to be stated or expressed in a concise form. Remember, this is not meant to be an in-depth description of the policies. Rather, it's a short, sharp summary of them before you start your critical analysis. Okay, we'll keep going. The next stop point, if you go back to that slide, it's asking you to critically analyse these policies. So critical means to involve skillful judgment as to the truth or merit. To analyse is to examine critically so as to bring out these essential elements or give the essence of. So as individuals, we face this task with numerous personal bias. These are all based on our own personal experiences and views of the world. You may have experiences with your own children, or those close to you, or yourself. But for the benefit of your studies and future teaching practice, we'd like you to take a step back, view the materials from an educator's perspective, and justify your findings with relevant academic literature and research findings. This is not an opinion piece. You are critically analysing policies and linking these to relevant academic literature. This is really, really important with your academic writing, and this is where the term critical comes in. Your critical analysis must involve skillful judgment as to the truth, the merit, etc., by drawing directly from policy documents and connecting them with your research findings from supportive literature within the learning materials and beyond. So you may have a certain belief about inclusion and wellbeing based on personal experience. However, you must be able to justify this with academic literature. This is where that critical analysis is really important. Okay, so in regards to the consider section, if we go back to my slide, the fourth dot point asks you to consider the implications of the policies on your practice as a graduate teacher. So how do policies impact on teaching? Okay, so this consider, will fulfill the implications of these policies upon your teaching practice. That is where you're making use of those findings to be relevant, suitable, pertinent to encounters that you are going to find within your teaching practices. Okay, the assessment criteria is reflected throughout the holistic rubric, so please ensure that you're meeting each of these as you are compiling your submission. You must be aiming towards these. So knowledge and understanding of additional needs and culturally diverse learners, depth and breadth of knowledge of pedagogical practices to support learners with additional needs, analysis of policies and research, and of course, academic expression. The rubric. This reminder is really important because the rubric is what the ELAs are marking against. SOL has a rigorous moderation process which ensures that ELAs interpret and follow the rubric in the same manner, therefore ensuring that consistency and fairness is maintained for all students. I guess the rubric's kind of like having a cheat sheet in some ways because we're showing you exactly what we're looking for in your submission. So let's have a quick look at the pass grade. We'll look at the pass grade and the high distinction grading. So all of the aspects within the holistic rubric must be met in order to achieve this grading. So for a pass, you have to meet these, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 descriptors. So these 7 dot points here. If you don't meet one of them, we actually can't pass you. So even if you're aiming for a high distinction, I always advise you to look at the pass grade and use it as a tick box to ensure that you are ticking off every single descriptor that's written here. So your essay includes a clear definition about wellbeing and inclusion for children with additional needs and culturally diverse learners. If you have not defined these terms, we cannot pass you. Really important. The second dot point says that you have an introduction that defines both the topic, so that's the first thing, it needs to outline the topic of the essay, but it also needs to provide a structure. So what will the essay be looking at? It will be looking at policies and critically analysing these and considering the implications on teaching practice. That's the structure. That's what the essay will be doing. So make sure you're doing those two things. You're defining the topic and you're providing a structure, because if you don't do those, again, we can't pass you for this assessment. Really important. Use this as your tick box. Ensure that your paragraphs explore one key idea each. That your essay includes a summary of the key elements of the state and federal policies. Again, if you don't include a summary of the policies, we can't pass you. You need to identify factors which impact teaching practice. So you need to have that consider section. How is it impacting on teaching practice? The implications on your teaching practice. You need to have scholarly literature, and of course APA and academic expression is in there too. You'll notice that in this wording, there's nothing about critically analyse. So this is more of a basic essay, will get you a pass if you haven't done any of that critical analysis, but you've got all these other elements in there. We move on to the high distinction. You'll notice that there's a bit of a change in the language. We already know that you've met the pass grade, the credit and the distinction to be able to get a high distinction. So you have to meet all the grades before. If you're wanting a high distinction, as well as meeting all the grades before, you also need to make sure that your essay is sound, logically argued, and well supported. It's free from ambiguity and contradiction. You need to have critical reading. You need to make connections between theory, so the things that you're reading, the theory, the broader society, so the policies, that's the broader societal, and the educational context impacting on inclusion in wellbeing practices. You need to connect those three things together. You need to have scholarly literature, and it needs to inform your beliefs. Okay, let's move on. We can talk more about this in the live collaborate, and you can ask these questions and we'll break that language down. This is an example only, this example essay structure. It's not a strict guideline. This can be modified to reflect your own understandings of the assessment requirements. It just should help you a little bit. So the introduction should engage the reader by outlining what your essay will cover and also the structure and the topic and why. And then draw your essay to a close with your conclusion. Remember, your conclusion should not include any new information. It's only a summary of what has been covered in a succinct and engaging manner. And just remember, the reference list isn't included in the word count. Again, this isn't a strict guideline. I've just given you as a bit of a guide to help you. Okay, so general tips for your assessment. This assessment should be written in the structure of an essay. Third person is to be used, so this is not a first person essay, it's a third person. You need to critically analyse, so this requires evidence to support your argument, so literature. Ensure you reference accurately. Support your findings with a wide range of relevant research and reference from our weekly readings and beyond. Ensure that you utilise your word count effectively and fulfil each of the rubric criterion. Carefully proofread your work, and upon submit through Turnitin. Of course, there's a lot of assistance. There's the discussion board out there where you can please ask as many questions as you like. Your fellow students and ELA are there to help. And make sure you attend the Collaborate session on Monday the 27th at 7:30 p.m. to have your further questions answered. Okay, so ensure that you research widely, respond to the criteria, and submit by the due date, and you'll be fine. Okay, good luck. I will see you at the live session on Monday the 27th. Bye.